session is really all about time and how little we have of it. We're having to really rush through things. So in the style of one of those sort of peace simulation games, we're going to simulate the feeling of time running out, as it is for this conflict, by keeping our speakers to very, very close time. That's going to be my main job here, is to be timekeeper. That will seem sometimes quite rude when I wind up our speakers, so I apologize in advance for that. But we've got in the space of an hour, two terrific panels to get through, 4 speakers on each one, and so you do the math. We don't have tons of time, and we're really going to try and get through it as quickly as we can. So first of all, I just wanted to welcome our panel. I'm not going to do the full introduction for each of these people, because they're all stellar personalities here who I could spend 5 minutes introducing. You've got full introductions here, so you can see, or full biographies rather, here, so you can learn more about them there. I'm just going to give, by way of a chance for you to welcome them here, the President of the New Israel Fund Board, Talia Sasson, Major General Eyal Ben Reuven, the Palestinian peace builder and entrepreneur Aziz Abu Sarah, and the all-round Jerusalem maven and expert Daniel Seidemann. So a warm welcome to them. Thank you. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to have, each person is going to have between 6 and 7 minutes, no more. When they're a minute away from time running out, I'm going to do that sort of thing, so they know that time is running out and they've got time to land the plane, as it were. And then we're going to go straight to the next person. I will only intervene if I feel there's something that just wasn't clear. Not that I agree or disagree, just something I think that we as the listening audience might want to clarify. So first up, with between 6 and 7 minutes to deal with this question. This is the question before us. This session is going to be on the core security challenges facing Israel today. First of all, to ask each of our 4 speakers how they define how they define the core challenges to Israel's security, and to ask them whether Israel is more or less secure with the current approach, the current mode of conflict management, often the phrase used rather than conflict resolution. Conflict management as opposed to attempting to solve the conflict. So that's the question before us, and as I said, first up to answer it, President of the New Israel Fund Board, Talia Sasson.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody. I'm so happy to be here. You know that New Israel Fund is an international organization, and this is UK branch, if you want, and I'm very pleased you came this morning to hear us. You asked a question about Israel's security in general, and I understand that you want us to be focused on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because Israel's security has some more other aspects to be discussed. So in my approach, what I believe is that the current situation in Israel, the ongoing conflict with Palestinians, what is so-called managing the conflict, is a formula for a disaster for us Israelis. And I'm talking only of a perspective of an Israeli Jew, or Israeli in general, in the state of Israel. I think that as the conflict is going on, more settlements are settled in the West Bank. I think that the main obstacle for a peace agreement with Palestinians are the settlements that increase terror activities in the end of the day from both sides. I believe that the only way how to solve the conflict, you can't persuade a child not to wake up in the morning and take a knife and stab some Jew that is going in the street. You need to solve this problem with a diplomatic solution. Without that, no solution is there. So I believe in a two-state solution in general. I could speak about how to achieve this. I just could say in that time limits that we have that I don't believe that the government of Israel, this current government, is making any progress towards the right direction that Israel should go to in this aspect. What I want to say is the most important in my view is that security in Israel is not only bombs, rockets, terror activity. Today, the current situation of Israel harms deeply the democracy of the state of Israel. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the only conflict between Israel and some other enemies, whatever there are in the world, is that this conflict is not only violent, this conflict endanger the principles of foundation of the state of Israel, because Israel can't continue controlling in the West Bank 2.6 million Palestinians without borders in two systems of law that applies there. It harms Israel democracy in many, many aspects. And if Israel will lose its democracy, and you could hear every day about a new bill that is suggested in the Knesset, if Israel won't be able to keep its democracy, it would lose its legitimation as the homeland of the Jewish people. We have to understand that. And this is what is put on the table. And we are in a lack of time. This is the last moment that this problem could be solved. And we have to understand that as long as the time running off, democracy in Israel is weakened and the end of the conflict is going far away from us. Therefore, I call you, people who are sitting here in London, that Israel is dear to you. Be supportive of those forces in Israel that are still fighting for democracy, as NIF, for instance. NIF is one of the biggest organizations in Israel that is doing this work. Therefore, the government of Israel recognized us, I believe so, as the real opposition in Israel, and therefore the NGO law against NGO organizations was invited by this government. I think that you should raise your voice here as supporters of the state of Israel. Make a difference between the government and between the state. Governments are changing. Governments have policies. The state needs to be a stable thing that we all support. And because we love the state of Israel, this is what we do. We are committed to our ideas of defending democracy because we love the state of Israel. I call you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Just by way of a follow-up, because wonderfully you haven't exhausted your full 7 minutes, which is great. Just channeling the voice of people who perhaps might not be here. Some would say, opponents would say, you've defined the lists of threats to security, but you haven't mentioned ISIS, you haven't mentioned incitement, that's the word used by the Palestinian Authority, or they would say more deeply, a historic refusal by Palestinians to accept the existence of a Jewish state in their midst. That's what some people, I'm not saying me, would say are the real threats to Israel's security. Just in the remaining minute, what would you say on that?
Right. So you phrased the question towards the conflict with Palestinians. Therefore, I didn't mention ISIS. I didn't mention Iran. I didn't mention Hamas. I didn't mention Hezbollah. And I didn't mention some other things. So I'm focused because of the time that is running only for that question.
I could just focus then on the Palestinian aspects that I mentioned, the incitement perhaps, and a Palestinian historic refusal to accept the notion of a Jewish state in the region.
So it depends what you think. If you think that this is your problem, this is my problem, that there is no a settlement between an agreement between Israelis and Palestinians, this is for my sake, this is my interest. So if I went to one doctor and I failed, and I went to the second doctor and I failed, and this is my disease, wouldn't I go to the 10th doctor? This is something that I have to try, to do the attempts again and again and again. And maybe if I did the right attempts, maybe I could achieve different achievements, maybe, and maybe not. And if not, And if I did a real attempt for an agreement with Palestinians, I should think from the beginning of it how to remove settlement unilaterally from the West Bank without removing the IDF from there. This is not good for me.
Thank you. So, as in so many other ways, a role model to the rest of us, Talia Sasson, has been brilliantly concise. So I'm going to ask the other speakers to do just the same. So next, the session is to really define the terms for the day and to lay out a groundwork. We are trying to define these core security challenges facing Israel today. So why don't I put the same question then to you, Major General Eyal Ben Reuven.
Knesset member, too.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Full biography in here.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I am very happy to be here with you. And I'll try to answer the question in the short time that I have. First of all, when we deal with the Israeli security, of course, we don't deal only with the Palestinian point. We have today very, very complicated situation in the north of Israel, in the south of Israel, and I think there is another panel that will speak about later about what's going on around, but it's very important for you to understand that the threat today about what happened in the north when the radical line from Iran to Syria to Hezbollah to Hamas and behind Russia today, it's for the long term, it's a threat that we take into account. The security situation today in Israel, it's not easy. It's under terror attack day by day. Day by day we have casualties, and it's operated by young boys, young girls, which take knives in the morning from their kitchen and going out to stab Israeli people, civilian or soldiers. The rationale for that act is based on their head. There is no any organization behind, and that's what make it so difficult to cope with this phenomenon, because there is no intelligence, there is no division, there is no F-35 who can cope with this kind of threat. And we have to understand that, I understand that their rationale, these guys, these boys and girls, it's come from no hope. It's come from the weakness of the Palestinian Authority, what they believe. It's come from what we say about what they see in the Israeli position. It's all make this no hope, which bring them to this idea that they are going to act and to lose their life. I mean, that's the point. The answer of the Israeli government today, which says to management the crisis today, it's don't lead to anywhere. I mean, it's take us from wave of terror to another wave, to another wave, to another wave. If you take the last 10 years, it's almost every 2 years we have a campaign, and between the campaign there is kind of terror, and it's not lead to any kind of solution. So what I believe in that point, that the separation, to separate between the two sides, between the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, this is the only way. It's the only way that we can go to a chance to solve the situation today. We have to remember that even if you take if we take the fact that we want to keep the Israel as a Jewish and democracy state. If you take the number today, is between the Jordan and the sea today, there is 49% it's Arabs and 51% is Jewish. This is the number, this is the fact today. I mean, it doesn't work if we will stay together with the friction that we experience day-by-day life, especially in the settlements area in Judah and Shomron. That's why I'm saying that the only way is separation. We have to try with the Palestinian to build successful state, successful Palestinian state, successful economically, successful socially, and independent more as we can. And it will take time. My idea is to if we will change the way we will change the government that we have today, my idea is to give time, to give 5 years, and to say, after these 5 years, we make the separation. We separate. Now, in these 5 years, I suggest, in these 5 years, I suggest to create the real negotiation with the Palestinian, to create a new coalition, regional coalition in the area, to give to our people who live today in Judah and Shomron, to take them out and to take them by their desire, by their willing, to the Negev or to Galilee or any place which they want. And then after 5 years, if we would success with the Palestinian, we will evacuate everything. If not, we will evacuate our civilian, we leave some of our militaries, but it will the objective of this evacuation is to create the relationship, the agreement with the Palestinian from another conditions, not as a friction that we are living today, but from situation when the friction that we face day by day in Judah and Shomron, we will go out of that, and then it will create a new condition to continuation of this talking with the Palestinian.
One very quick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. One very quick thing is on evacuation. There are plenty of people also on the left who say evacuating large numbers of settlers is now impossible after what happened in Gaza with just a small number. To talk about evacuating 100, 200,000 settlers, impossible.
It's you know the situation now in the managing of this crisis. Every day, it reduces the chance to create a real solution. That's the point today. I hope that we will change, we will replace our government as fast as we can, and then we will give the chance to do and to go to a real solution for the future.
All right, thank you. A lot of support in the room. Only because of time pressure, we just have to move on as quick as we can. The same questions to you about core security challenges. It's defined here as facing Israel, but you may want to take it more widely. Peace builder, entrepreneur, Aziz Abu Sarah.
Thank you. I get some extra time being, for the name of equality, being the Palestinian and the panel, right?
Yes, very nice try, but I'm afraid it's going to have to be 7 minutes for you as well. I'm so sorry.
All right, I'll take it to a different place. I actually don't think the greatest challenge for security in Israel is external. I don't think it's the geopolitical. I don't think it's Iran. Actually, IDF chief agrees with me that it's not Iran. I think the greatest challenge to Israel is something else. I would quote the Bible for that, and I'll take the book of Proverbs, where it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think that's what Israel is facing today, that there is no vision. If somebody here, whether you work for the government or not, can tell me what is the plan, how are we moving forward, I would love to hear it, because I don't know if the Israeli government is going toward 2 states or 1 state or 3 states. Whether I agree with it or not, I just can't figure out what is that plan. I hear different ministers normally saying different things, and nobody seems to make sense in understanding how we're moving. But even when you take it to a much more concrete level, when we talk about Gaza, Israel IDF Intel chief just recently agreed with the UN saying that in 4 years, Gaza will be not suitable to live in it. It'll be uninhabitable. And yet, there's nobody talking about what we're going to do with it. Not Egypt, not Israel, not the Palestinian Authority for that matter as well. So we're going to have 2 million people that living in a place that is not livable, and we have no plan on how to deal with it. And we're talking about 4 years, which really explains to me why nobody is dealing with the global warming in the world, because if something in 4 years we can't even think about something in long term. But this is the problem, is when you have no vision, then you focus on other things. If you don't have necessarily something you can turn to and solve, you start focusing on some internal issues that are problematic. Failure of governance. You know, most countries, this is a timeless truth that works always, most collapses that happen in government are not due to external threats, are due to internal ones, are due to failure of governance, are due to lack of civil liberties, are due to injustice. And you justify that by having, all these focus on either fifth column inside and claiming that there are traitors and everybody who disagrees with you is a traitor, or focus on external threats that are often not real threats. And I'm talking about things like people who disagree, but things also injustice within the government or in Israel, but things like inequality for the Arab citizens of Israel, things like the unrecognized villages in the Negev. I'm talking about Jerusalem where, we'll talk later much about it, but I'm talking about issues like where you have 2,000 classrooms missing in Jerusalem, and yet nobody's talking about that when all these kids are going out with knives and attacking civilians. But nobody is talking about the issue of education. No one is talking about that Jerusalem has been completely ignored by the Israeli government. Even as you hear the vision about how to stop the current attacks of these kids, we don't hear much about what the Palestinians have been doing to stop it. Most of the attacks that were stopped, over 200 attacks according to the Palestinian Intel chief, 200 attacks were foiled by Palestinians. Way more than the Israeli government could even dream of doing. More than the IDF had done. And that's where the future goes. Is it through cooperation? If you want security for Israel, it is not going to happen only by military. And focusing on that only will eventually hurt Israel in every other place in the country, in the government.
Terrific. Thank you very much indeed. It's just quite interesting your point about the Palestinian Authority. It's one of the other things we're talking about time running out. People feel that time is running out in terms of popular support for that body, and people have noticed there hasn't been an election, I think, since 2005 at the presidential level. Mahmoud Abbas not getting any younger. How much grounding, even legitimacy, does that have among Palestinians?
You're absolutely right. I think the lack of vision, unfortunately, isn't only in Israel, it's also among the Palestinian leadership. And the reason for that is as a Palestinian, I look at what the Palestinian Authority has to offer me, and at the moment, it's nothing. The political process is dead. There is no peace negotiations. They're not able to achieve the two-state solution. And there is no reason, really, for people to support a government that's not able to create freedom, that cannot control its own entrance in and out, that really offers no alternative to the Palestinians. And at the moment, I don't envy Mahmoud Abbas because he's in a place of what can I do? And we need a vision of what to do in the situation where Israel is saying no to giving a Palestinian state and having an alternative plan. And at the moment, the alternative plan that I keep hearing from the Palestinian Authority is like, we are doomed if we don't get a state. I like to think that we should have another plan than just we are doomed if we don't have a state in the next whatever years.
Well, that might be something worth pursuing if we do have any time to get into what that alternative might look like. You mentioned, Aziz, Jerusalem, which leads us naturally to the man who has sort of become the go-to authority on the law and changing landscape of Jerusalem, and I and other journalists have turned to him often. So why don't you take the floor, Danny Seidemann.
Thank you. Well, I do Jerusalem, so let's start there. With an audience such as this, I don't have to explain just how important and central Jerusalem is for the Jewish people and our aspirations and for the Zionist enterprise. I also don't have to dwell on how Jerusalem has become, in many ways, the epicenter of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, and in some ways between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. But I would argue that over the last year and a half, Jerusalem has also become emblematic of the conflict and discloses the greatest existential challenge confronting the Jewish people and Israel and the Zionist enterprise in this generation. All of us are aware of the Jerusalem that emerged after the Six-Day War. A mantra emerged. The mantra is something that you know, but you may not know that you know it. The mantra is Jerusalem, the undivided capital of Israel that will never be redivided, which is one word and a noun, and you have to be able to recite it 7 times in a row in order to get elected to the Republican National Convention or whatever. It's easy to mock that, but the mantra of a united Jerusalem with deep Jewish attachments, it really stems from very noble places. I want to, however, put it to a reality check. Just how real is that Jerusalem, the undivided capital of Israel? Is Jerusalem a Jewish city? Is it an Israeli city? Of course it is. It's the largest Jewish city in history. There are 530,000 Israelis living in Jerusalem. It's larger. The last time it was anywhere near as large was during the Second Temple period, 200,000 Jews living in Jerusalem. But a dirty little secret. Jerusalem has a Palestinian population. Palestinians who are not Israeli. There are Palestinian citizens of Israel in Haifa, in Nazareth, in the Negev. The Palestinians of East Jerusalem are not. They are permanently disenfranchised. They are not citizens of Israel. They don't want to be Israeli. They're not Israeli, and we don't treat them as Israeli. In 1967, the Palestinian population was 25.5%. Today, it's 38% of the population. In our lifetimes, there will be a Palestinian majority in Jerusalem, and they will be permanently disenfranchised. That is not sustainable. 2, Israel is Jerusalem the capital of Israel? Well, for me it is. I have a very strange, odd relationship with a one-stater who is a right-wing ideologue by the name of Reuven. His home is in Jerusalem. I've argued 25 cases before the Israeli Supreme Court in Jerusalem, in the Supreme Court. But now I will show you here and now in London all of the foreign embassies in Jerusalem. There isn't one of them. You want to see them again? Not one. Not one country on the planet recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Are they all anti-Semites? No. They are waiting for a political resolution of the conflict. The first embassy in Jerusalem will be the Palestinian embassy, and when our embassy goes to East Jerusalem, and until then, hair will sprout on the palms of my hand before there'll be another embassy in Jerusalem. Finally, is Jerusalem an undivided city? I've been out on the streets of East Jerusalem for the last 25 years. I spent much of the Second Intifada visiting the Shuafat refugee camp, without knowing a word of Arabic, by the way, or any Arabic that could be said in decent company. I can't go to 90% of East Jerusalem today without taking risks upon myself that I'm always said. I can go when I'm accompanied with a Palestinian friend, but not alone. That was never the case before. Jerusalem was always a divided city since '67, divided by glass walls. Today, the cognitive barriers in Jerusalem are like an electrified fence. I've already taken a rock to the head in Surbacher, barely a kilometer and a half away from my home. Lest you think this is just an impression, during the entire Second Intifada, 2000 to 2008, Israel arrested 270 Palestinians in East Jerusalem for security-related offenses. 270 in 7 years. Between September 13th of last year, 2015, Erev Rosh Hashanah, and October 31, we arrested 797 Palestinians. During 2015, Israel arrested more than 950 Palestinian kids under the age of 18. Since the outbreak of violence in July of 2014, Israel has arrested close to 1.5% of all of the Palestinian boys in East Jerusalem. That is a staggering number. We are in the midst of a popular uprising, the likes of which we have never seen since 1967. And for much of that time, we didn't even notice because we are so separated. Well, we're noticing it now. Now, what causes 15-year-old kids to go out on a nightly basis and clash with the Israeli police for a year and a half? Are they evil kids? Are they incited by this charismatic rock star Abu Mazen? No. They know they have no future. They are cut off from Palestine. They are not Israeli. They don't want to be Israeli. And they know nobody gives a damn about them. Palestinian lives don't matter. It's about the occupation, stupid. The greatest challenge to the Jewish people in this generation is occupation. Israel cannot survive as a perpetually occupying power. Israel can fend off every external threat that we have. ISIS, Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah. We have no operational answer to occupation. And we are very close to losing the possibility of ending occupation, because occupation ends in one way and one way alone. It ends in a border. And we know where that border goes. And that border is being jeopardized by a government that is willfully creating a one-state reality. One final word. Your prime minister spoke out in Jerusalem a couple of weeks ago in Commons. God bless him. He told Israelis unpleasant truths about the unsustainability of occupation. Our Prime Minister Netanyahu accused him of being unfamiliar with Jerusalem. Believe me, I accompanied Mr. Cameron. He's familiar. He did exactly what we needed. And Prime Minister Cameron displayed a greater affinity and understanding of Jerusalem than our Prime Minister, who is devoted to the undivided capital of Israel that does not exist in nature and that is perpetuating the greatest security challenge confronted by the Jewish people in this generation, occupation.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Huge amounts of very provocative and arresting arguments from all four of our speakers. I'm afraid the clock is against us. We're out of time. I suppose, before we bring on our next panel, a final thank you to Talia, Sasson, Eyal, Reuven, Aziz, Abu Sarah, and Danny Seidemann. Thank you.